All right, so welcome everybody to session 5 or day 5. We're going to be talking today about support and a little bit about celebrations. I have allotted an entire session to this because I think my personal opinion is that support and celebrations is just as critical as what you choose for curriculum and making sure that you have paper and pencils in your house. And so I'm going to cover a number of different aspects of support this today, just to help you recognize that I'm not just talking about one particular kind of support. And I'm going to tell you about how to set yourself up for success around different areas of support. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like to have good spiritual support, good community support, good family support, and a little bit of business support. That may not make sense right now, but I will explain what I mean by that. And at the end of this training, I am going to be giving away one of my favorite support secrets. So you'll want to be tuning in for that. If you want to be eligible, make sure that you comment in the feed. All right. And for this one, I just want to let you know that if you've won something already, you can be eligible for this one again. I am going to pull this random according to who actually shows up on this training. All right. So support. Let's first of all talk about this idea that you are embarking on this big commitment, right? It's outside of the expectation of what a mom is supposed to do, or what a wife is supposed to do, or what a woman in general is supposed to do. You're really taking on a whole nother role as a teacher in your child's life, or at least the responsibility of figuring out what their education looks like. And so as you do that, as you step into a new role, anybody who is going into a new profession or something like that often looks for who out there has results, who's doing things the way that I want to do them successfully, and either using that option as a mentor or a coach or just an example, right? So there's several that I want to talk to you about today. The first one is a spiritual support system. Obviously, I have a Christian background and believe wholeheartedly that Jesus is my Savior, and that's about having a relationship with Him, not just I go to church on Sundays. But I assume that Jesus is working in my life for my good every single day. And I believe that His Holy Spirit directs me. And so if you are someone who is in agreement with that type of a worldview, that God is in a relationship with me and is capable of directing me in my steps every single day, then I encourage you to tap into that when it comes to how to school your children well. Don't neglect that. Don't forget that that is a superpower that you have, that God has given you and made available to you, that you have the ability to communicate with the creator of the universe about what you need, about what your children need, about what's working and not working. All right. But one thing I want to explain to you that might help give you some comfort around how this is all going to go this year is an analogy that I've used a number of times at different events where I've spoken, or with different ones of my clients. So if you have heard me talk before, this will be familiar to you. But I often use this analogy of working with God, especially with our kids, is a lot like baking cookies. And if you have ever baked cookies with a toddler or a young child, and you have decided, you know what, today's activity that we're going to do today is we're going to bake cookies together, right? So I want you to think about the different aspects that go into that process, right? You've got a really young child. Do they know how to bake cookies well? No, they don't. Have they successfully made cookies? Nope, they haven't. Can they successfully do all the parts of the process, even if they knew all the things to do, even if they had done the recipe correct, done it before, or do we know whether or not they could actually do it? Well, if you're 2 or 3 years old, you can't reach the handle to the stove, to the oven, to open it up, to even put the cookies in there. There's a lot of the job that is actually physically impossible for a toddler to do. And so the parent, you might come along and say, hey, I'm baking cookies with you. I am going to help you out with this. And you don't have to worry about that. I can get them in the oven, right? So let's say, I'm going to just take this a little further here and say, let's say you've got a child who's shaping these cookies, right? And they're putting them on the pan. I want you to picture how this goes. Let's say you've got a little perfectionistic little toddler that's like trying to shape their cookies, and they're like, I can't get them to be circles. I can't get it to be a circle, and so I'm gonna have a temper tantrum, and it's gonna be awful, and I'm not a good cookie maker, and I'm not gonna be able to do it, and Mom, I can't, and they just like start falling apart, right? And we as the parent, looking on to this precious child who can't make circles out of their cookie dough because goodness, they're 2 or 3. They haven't ever learned how to make circles out of cookie dough. And we're standing there thinking things like, oh, you precious, adorable thing, that you think this is all up to you. Isn't that just so sweet that you think that, like, the honest truth is, I, as the parent, know if she puts the cookie on there in such a nasty, crazy shape that it's not gonna bake right, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be like, she's gonna hand over the pan and I'm gonna be like, I'm just gonna put that thing together when she's not looking, and it's gonna come out perfect because I like fixed it on the way in the oven, right? Or they have some sort of meltdown about being able to use a rolling pin. I can't use a rolling pin. I don't know how to use a rolling pin. I tried it one time and it didn't work. And you come in and you're like, okay. And you put your hands on their hands and you help them roll the dough. And it's like, it's not any big deal to you, right? You made cookies. You know how to make cookies. You know that they can't mess it up, right? They can't do something so bad to that cookie dough that you cannot successfully get cookies that look decent out of the oven, right? Now, if you're not a baker and you have habitually burnt your cookies all your life and you're sitting there thinking this analogy doesn't work for me, just go with it, okay? Don't ruin the fun. But I have burnt my fair share of cookies. But the point is that God is like that parent to us, and we are like that toddler. Part of getting beautiful cookies at the end is that we decided to work with our toddler in the process. That is part of the perfect process, is that I, as the parent, decided I wanted to work with the child. And I want you to remember that, because God, in his perfection and holiness, decided that part of his perfect plan is to collaborate with you, And yet there is not a single thing that you can do so bad that you will ruin completely what you are putting on the pan. You do the best you can, and God takes care of the results. He does. You can trust him. And so whether you're jumping into homeschool, whether you're public schooling part of it, whether you're private schooling part of it, whether you've decided that you're going to do this curriculum or that curriculum. I encourage you to make the best decision you can and recognize that you have the support of the creator of the universe taking care of the results. And you can approach him like he's in charge of it all and say, I'm putting these cookies together on this pan as best I can. God, I need you to help them turn out because I want them to be good cookies, right? I am giving it everything I got to be able to teach the kids, to raise them like I know that you will be pleased, like I am presenting them, I am giving it everything I've got, and I am putting the results in your hands. I trust you with that. And so as you go into this season, whatever you choose, I hope that you will move forward, first of all, with the understanding that you have God not only as your support, but he's like over there fixing everything that you leave messed up. He is. He will do that. He's faithful. You can believe that he's working all things together for good for your life. And so that's the first part of support, is recognizing that you have like this superpower spiritual support at your fingertips that you have only need to acknowledge in a moment's notice. It is present every day. It's honestly present whether you're acknowledging or not. But we tap into it and it gives us so much peace and so much rest. It takes the anxiety away. Like, oh, you mean I could do the best I could to put all these cookies on the pan and they'll still come out circles? Yep. God can cause that to happen. It's not going to be just because you squished it the wrong way. And if he left it like that, he left it on purpose. There's something about that child that he decides, okay, this mistake, I'm not fixing it. And there's a reason, and he's using it for that child's good, because he's just as much in their life as he is in yours. So I encourage you to come from that place. If you don't get anything else from this support call, get that God is in your court and that he is baking cookies with you in your schooling, okay? The second thing I want to talk about is community and how you can get support from your local community. Most of these are going to be things that you already know, but I want to just tap into a couple of details about them. So 3 aspects of community support include local homeschool groups, online support, and church. Okay. So first of all, local homeschool groups. There are numerous different ways that you can connect with people, whether it's through co-ops that meet to help trade classes. Like each mom comes and teaches a skill that they're good at, and the kids can explore a number of different extracurricular skills. Those are really fun. Other co-ops are just for getting together and doing fun things or having field trips or things like that. That may be something that's a little more difficult to work out, but there might be aspects that you could do. I've seen people even right now having, like we'll set up a picnic and we'll all bring our blankets and we'll all play outside, but our picnics are on separate blankets and we're eating sort of together in the same area. We can chat and visit, but we aren't like all intertwinkled together, right? So there are homeschool groups that are just for social interaction, that are for extracurricular studies, that get together and do field trips together so you can get group discounts, that and that also help support academically. So dig around, look some different places that you can find those. Certainly online, you can Google homeschool co-ops for your area or whatever town you're in or whatever major city you're near. You can look that way. You can also, sometimes the local libraries will be aware of who in the town is a homeschool group, as well as if you know any other homeschool moms in your area, they are likely to be great resources for what homeschool groups might be in the area. Um, you may consider tapping into seasoned homeschool moms too. If you know of a mom who homeschooled 20 years ago, for instance, a lot of those moms have an infinite amount of wisdom of what's available around that we take for granted as younger moms trying to tap into figuring out what to do and where to go and how to do it. And they love to be asked. They love to be able to help and say, they're longing to share the wealth of knowledge that they have with you. They worked hard to do that for their family, and it's so satisfying to be able to help other families as well, to pave the way and make it easier for other people. Most homeschool moms that are long-term veterans are longing to help the next generation come along and thrive, really. So don't forget that there are people in your community that you probably don't even know about that have homeschooled, that have all kinds of ideas of how you could have support. All right, so that's local homeschool groups. Online, you know that there are lots of online homeschool groups. My one warning to online homeschool groups is that if you find that the group that you're in is spending a lot of time being controversial and judgy, I encourage you to protect your sanity and just bow out of that group. Look for the ones that are actually giving good academic support, good encouragement. Often they'll have some moms in there that like you can start to see who regularly posts in a group for assistance. You can go friend that person, and they're probably going to be a really good person to get to know, to build on, like, and learn from, and be a good advocate, possibly be a good friend that you can get to know, to be supportive. So I would encourage you to use online groups that way, but don't feel bad if you get in a group and most of what you see is causing anxiety or conflict or something like that. Don't feel bad at all about just saying goodbye to that. And then church. I encourage you to stay involved in your church, even if the people in your church are not homeschooling and they're doing public school or private school or whatever. There are ways that you can connect with them. Don't forget that we're all trying to do what's best for our family. And we can connect together from that standpoint. I'm trying to do something that's best for my family. Somebody else is trying to do that, and they may look different, but we all still have the same longing in our heart, which is to see our kid be successful, be raised. And if we're in church, usually there's some aspect of, most of all, we want them to love God and love others and show that to other people. And so we can come alongside each other. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do that well when we talk about celebrations. But do not neglect community. Whether you're allowed to get out of the house or not, do not neglect community. It is everything in this journey, because you're going to be home more often. Your kids are going to be home more often. And you're going to need what they call in the healthcare world, you're going to need some respite. You're going to need some people to help take turns, or somebody to just listen, things like that. That's important, and it's often taken for granted. Are you tracking with me? Any questions yet? I'm going to move to family in just a minute, and we're going to talk about what it looks like when we don't have support. So just checking in. I'll keep watching the comments. If you have a question, let me know and I'll stop and answer it. All right, let's talk a little bit about family support. I'm going to be real bold. I said this in one of the earlier sessions, but I want to reiterate it. If you are married, it is vital that you and your spouse are on the same page about the choice that you're making about school this year. Because, for instance, I was on a forum the other day, and there was a woman who said that she had just, and if this is you, I'm not trying to out you. I don't remember the name of the person, but I think she said something like that she was thinking about homeschooling, but the husband was like, all right, you can homeschool, but I don't want to hear you complaining about them when I come home from work. okay, hold up. Like, if you're going to homeschool, you're going to get tired. You're going to get annoyed at your kids, and you're going to need somebody to talk to about it. So if your husband isn't on board with you talking about what's not working, there's more communication that needs to happen before you make that commitment. You need to understand, and he needs to understand, that you're making this commitment together, that both of you have decided this is the best choice. And this is not some magic thing that he gets to give some like ultimatum that if you decide to do this, now he's got a magic card that he can pull out. You're never allowed to complain about the kids. That's crazy. That's not going to happen. You're going to have days that you fuss about your kids, right? So it's just a sign that more conversation needs to happen in order to get on the same page. It's got to be a team thing, because it is going to be different. It takes some adjustment to take all this time out of your day to teach your kids that ordinarily you would have been doing other things. I am going to be looking for that myself. It's going to take time away from me running my business. It's going to take time away from me being able to exercise. I'm going to have to get creative about where those things work. And sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it isn't. But my husband is my teammate. And if I'm having a hard time with some of those things, it's going to be really vital that it be okay that I come and talk to him about them. And not from I think we made a bad choice, but from a standpoint of, I don't know how to fix it, or I don't know what to do differently. I need to be able to bat these ideas around. So that's really a critical piece, that you be on the same page with your spouse. All right. And it's good to know if you've got any kids that are like seriously contemplating mutiny on you. I'm not saying that your kids have to be completely on board, but if you know that you're about to go into a battle, you're going to want to choose very carefully how many of those battles you fight, because they will wear you down. All right. And you may want to look for other ways for them to get support outside of just between you and them, so that they have a similar outlet to be able to complain about you that you like to have with your spouse, to complain about them. Right. And to troubleshoot things. And so I encourage you, if you already know that you've got a teenager or a kid that's going to give you a lot of battles, one support is to look for somebody that they feel comfortable talking to, that isn't you, that they could go and just, like when they've had it with their teacher, they can't come home and say, my teacher was mean to me today, and you put your arm around them and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, what happened? Because you're the teacher. So they're not going to come and tell you, hey, you were a pain in the neck to me today, please comfort me. It doesn't work the same way. So look, who has God put in their life that can be a friend to them? And I would just have a conversation with that individual and say, hey, my kid might need some support to that this year. And often in our family, it's been like one of my siblings ends up being a good resource for one of my children to chat with. Or maybe it's another person in the neighborhood that they get along with really well, that's, a young adult or something like that, that has a little maturity, that's not going to be like, yeah, your parents are a piece of crap and I think you ought to just leave. That's not going to be helpful. But somebody that you trust to steer them well, but that they have an outlet. So that's some support for your immediate family. As far as extended family, we don't necessarily have to have the approval of our extended family to homeschool or private school or public school, though it is nice. We don't have to have the approval of our close friends or relatives or church family. None of that is really their jurisdiction at all. But a lot of times they tell us what they think, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of tips around how to help with extended family. Of course, if you have extended family that's supportive, awesome. You got bonus support in your back pocket. And I encourage you to Remember that and seek it out when you have available time to do so. But if you do not, and there are a lot of people who do not have supportive extended family or relatives or friends, then the next two things I'm going to tell you are really important. Number one, do not go looking for the opinions and feedback of people who do not have the results that you want. I'll say it again. Do not go looking for the opinions or feedback from people who do not have the results that you want. If Great Aunt Gertrude thinks it's terrible that you're homeschooling your kids, the first question you ask is, does she have results with her children's education that I am trying to emulate? Are those results the things that I want? If she does not have results that you're looking for, what do we care what Aunt Gertrude thinks? Now, you can't always avoid the conversation, but if you can keep in mind that if they don't have the results, their opinion doesn't really matter, a lot of times you can just let it sort of wash right off, that it's not that big of a deal that they have an opinion that way. All right. The other piece is that, and this one is one that I learned the hard way, is be careful how you communicate to the people around you. And this one can include your husband. So hold on. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me and my mom. When my children, this is not about homeschooling, but it correlates really well. When my children were little toddlers, at the worst stage, I had 5 kids, and the oldest one was 6, and there are no twins, and I was a little busy, right? I was also very committed to a lot of volunteer projects. I was, in hindsight, over committed to a lot of volunteer projects, but I didn't want to be in the house any more than I was. And that was part of why I kept over committing to the projects, because I was looking for something that intentionally drug me out of the house, because I was so, all the children, all the time. And they're very energetic and they're very active and they're all learning different things, and they haven't figured out how to not put everything in their mouth, and they break stuff and they're jumping on things and all the things, right? And so one of my outlets was to call my mother, who lived 1,000 miles away, but we would talk on the phone, and I would tell her the things that had gone crazy that day, because it was just nice to talk to somebody else that was like, yeah, that's nuts. It just felt so validating, right? So I got in the habit of being able to tell her all of my funny stories, right? Funny stories like, this child walked outside today, tripped, busted his face on a pipe, and now is missing a tooth. And then the next day, or a couple of days later, they went back outside and his older brother accidentally hit him in the face with a snow shovel, and now he's missing 2 front teeth. And so it would be my way of just sort of decompressing, laughing off the story, right? And then another day, let me tell you about how my 2-year-old is determined that he's not going to take naps anymore. And even though he can't figure out how to climb himself out of the crib, what he is doing is he stands in the crib and he shakes the thing so hard, which happens to be on rollers, that he can shake the thing all the way across his room that has a hardwood floor and be able to open his door while still in his crib. He just leveraged his body weight against the crib to get himself 10 feet across from one side of the room to the other. And now he opens the door and he's able to watch what's going on the outside of his room. And so I am having a little trouble getting him to take a nap. Another day, this child today is doing experiments on what fits down the toilet. Apparently, all sorts of little Lego and Playmobil things fit down the toilet. But you know what we discovered today? That the Playmobil treasure chest does not fit all the way down the toilet. It fits part of the way down the toilet, just enough to clog up other things that might need to go down the toilet, but not so far down the toilet that it will actually clear the drain. And so we had a grand time pulling the toilet, actually turning the thing upside down, putting it in a bucket of hot soapy water and having to plunge the thing backwards to get the toy back out of the toilet. Isn't that fun? And my mom would be laughing on the other end. It was hilarious. I was like, it was such a relief to me, and I was relaxed. And here's what happened. I discovered that when I went to visit her, she was super paranoid about any of my kids being left unsupervised. Why? Because the only thing I have told her is everything they have ever done wrong. Anything they have ever gotten into, any mischief they have ever made, those are the stories that I have told her. It's the only perspective that she had of my children. And so when they come to her house, her radar is up for all the mischief, all the mistakes, all the problems, right? Her radar's up. And so what is she going to see? She's going to see the mischief, the problems, everything that hasn't gone well. And her general assumption at that point is, oh my goodness, Mary's raising a bunch of hellions. And I don't know if they're going to turn out okay. Well, they did have some hellion behavior sometimes because they're 2 or 4 and they get into things. And there was a lot of them, and I ran out of time to train them all properly. And at the same time, they did a lot of things good, and they were sweet, and they were kind, and they were obedient, and they went to bed when they were told most of the time. But she didn't hear those stories. She only heard the ones where they didn't go to bed, right? And so it's a good thing to notice what is the main message that the people that you are longing for support from, what's the main message that they're getting about your kids? If you want to hear them be hopeful that homeschooling is going to work for you and is working for you, you better be putting some positive stories in the rotation of what you're talking about. It's really nice to be able to go and talk about what isn't working, whether they're having trouble reading or whether they're not getting their math, or whether you just talk about like, I'm working on this, that, or the other. We often connect over problems and things that aren't working. But if you do that, if you only tell those stories and you're longing for support, you're setting yourself up for a real big disappointment. They're not going to give it because they're concerned that all the stories they're hearing is that it's a failure and it's not working, and they're not getting the education that they need. And yet you're still continuing to do it. What's your problem? Make sense? So just be aware. And of course, this happens with your husband too. If he comes home and the only things you tell him about what happened that day are all the ways that the kids didn't do their schoolwork, or the fights you had, or the problems you had, he's going to have the perspective that you're complaining about your kids all the time, that it's not working, and he doesn't know why in the world you decided to do this in the first place. So this is just a really good tuck it away. Be sure to balance out the things that you're telling other people. If you're wanting their support, if you can give them positive stories so that they have evidence that things are going well, you are much more likely for them to be convinced that things are going well, because the only evidence they're getting is from your mouth or their mouths, your observations or their observations. You get to set the tone for the success that is coming from what they do or don't do. All right. So it doesn't mean you can't ever tell funny stories or the crazy stories, but let's throw some really good wins in there too. I changed that with my mother, and gradually over time it changed her perspective of who they were and how they behave. They also grew up, which is nice, and they don't shove things down the toilet anymore. So that's good. So be aware that the opinions of other people that do not have the results that you want, we don't care about those opinions. And you are also responsible, at least in part, for the opinions that other people develop around your children based on the stories that you're telling. So just be aware of that. All right. So that's about family, immediate and extended. You can get all kinds of support through different kinds of options. If you don't know about these options, that's why I'm just listing them. There are hybrid options. There are options like schools that will do 2 days in school and 3 days homeschool, or like Classical Conversations is you go to a class 1 day a week and you're at home 4 days a week. There are plenty of other programs that do that. There's one called Arrows. There's another one, Heart something. Can't remember what the other thing is. But anyway, there's a bunch of different hybrid options. You can hire tutors. If you're looking for support, like if you're afraid, I can't do all of this by myself, I don't know how to get all of these things done at the same time, especially if you're a working mom and you're trying to figure out how to do your job and get your kid trained, and you've decided to homeschool, some of these things are worth considering. Don't try to do this job by yourself. I actually have a theory that no mom homeschools the best way she possibly can alone. No mom homeschools at her best alone. The best ones have people who are helping. It's a team. It's people contributing into their kids' lives, into your life. And so there's all kinds of ways. You can barter. You can decide, hey, I stink at math, you stink at language arts, we're neighbors, we're both homeschooling. How about we take turns? You send your kids to my house for math, I'll send my kids to your house for language arts. They can do it all together. Let's play to each other's strengths, right? You can also do things like, especially if teens are going to be around homeschooling, there are some teens that would love some part-time work. And if you've got little kids that have to listen, that you have to sit and listen to them read out loud, there are teens or even older, the elderly people in your area that might love to just like, hey, could we barter for you come over and listen to John read for 20 minutes out loud? Listening to my kids learn to read was, I would rather pull my hair out. That's the honest truth. But there was a lady that lived down the road that was kind of looking for something really easy for her to contribute. And so she would come over and read. And occasionally I would make meals for their family. I wish I had made more. She did it out of the kindness of her heart. And I feel like I got way more out of that deal than what I should have. But you can barter, like, hey, you come read with my kid, I'll throw two more, another chicken in the pot and have dinner for you available, or 2 or 3 nights a week or whatever. There's all kinds of options. Teens, you can do the same thing. Your own kids, you can do the same thing. If one of your older kids needs to read out loud, stick them with the kid who needs to be read to, or have him listen, right? Or have the older teen listen to the younger teen. It's good experience, right? You can hire somebody in the neighborhood. I'll pay you $5 to come over here and listen to my kid recite his ABCs for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is, right? There's all kinds of possibilities. Don't forget the internet. Of course, there's lots of Zoom going on, but I'll tell you, 3 of my kids learned to read by Skyping with my mother 3 or 4 times a week when she was 1,000 miles away. We were doing that long before COVID ever came along. She was really their reading teacher. And so what we did was we bought a reading program and we bought a duplicate book. And I mailed one to Georgia where she was, and I had one in New Hampshire. So my kids had the book in front of them and she had the book on the other screen. They learned to sign in, and every day they would read to her and get their reading practice. And then sometimes she would read a fun book back to them as kind of the reward for being able to do that. it was just every day, about 3 or 4 times a week, at 9 o'clock in the morning. And my kids got to where they knew the pattern. They'd sit down, turn the computer on, they get to where they can do it themselves and they don't need help. It was great. And I never had to sit and listen to one of my kids read aloud again. And I still have some hair to show. Yeah. So all kinds of ways that you can get support that way. Just get creative. Let me just check the questions. One of you's got, okay. Ina says, that's how my husband is in general. You want to have kids? You want to be a stay-at-home mom? If I'm frank with him, like, yes, and I still like them and being with them, but I still have an issue at my work and I'm looking to my partner for troubleshooting. And sometimes he gets it, sometimes he doesn't. Yep. He's like that about homeschooling too. I wouldn't expect any differently. So what about that? Yeah, I would say, Ina, that's it's kind of an ongoing conversation. A lot of times I find that my husband doesn't know what I'm wanting him to do instead. So he gets tired of listening to the stuff because he's not sure what the purpose is. What's the purpose of listening to this? It's annoying. I get tired of it. I don't know what to do about it. I don't have an answer. And I just get weary of having to listen to it. So a lot of times if I can articulate what the purpose of sharing it is, it helps him feel successful in the conversation. So if it's something that I'm just saying, you know what, I had a long day, can I tell you about it? And you just be okay with that, you can get agreement, and a lot of times they'll be a lot more positive. Or if you are genuinely interested in like, hey, I would like to tell you about a situation. I still want to be homeschooling, but I'm wondering if you have any ideas around how to approach this or something like that, and be really pragmatic about making a request for what outcome you're looking for. Then a lot of times our husbands are like, sweet, a game I can win. I'm in. And they'll be more receptive to listening, or they basically, it's kind of like a game. I know how to win this game. I am willing to play, right? So be looking for ways that you can do that with your conversations about school stuff as well. A lot of times, if I can articulate what that need is at the beginning of telling him something, the whole conversation goes way better. So it's definitely, and sometimes, I mean, there's definitely the aspect that there are husbands that are like, if they can decide that you decided this, then that absolves them of responsibility, and they don't have to, it's kind of like a way to not feel like they need to or have a vested interest in it. And so they don't have to put a lot of effort into that because it wasn't their idea. And that's a convenient thing that we all do from time to time when we don't really want to have to take action in a difficult situation, or not really interested in putting more energy into something. And at that point, I would say you just have to get real honest about, are they really okay with you doing it? And are you really okay with doing it without their support? Don't go into that situation thinking, okay, eventually maybe I'll have his support. You have to be aware that he's not going to give his, like, he has decided he's not going to give his assistance in this area. And so from that standpoint, maybe you find somebody else to reach out to for troubleshooting issues instead. I would be very cautious about how I did that, though. That starts to create some conflict areas, and I would go down that and have a good conversation about, okay, what concerns does he have? What are his longings about school? What is he hoping to accomplish, or what are his priorities that make it so that this isn't something that he thinks ought to happen, or that he doesn't want you to be doing? Or sometimes there's some deeper conversations that need to be addressed. And if you can address the longings underneath some of that stuff, sometimes it smooths out, or sometimes it's like he's genuinely concerned for you biting off more than you can chew, and he's watched you do it before, and he has to pick up the pieces. He doesn't want to do it again. And so we get to kind of own our own mess if stuff like that comes up and say, oh, okay, yeah, I do tend to overcommit, and then he catches the brunt of it. And that's not really fair. So what am I going to do differently this year that is going to respect him and his desire not to get dumped on or whatever? How am I going to behave differently so that that's not the end result, and that kind of respects him and his needs too? So a couple of different ways that you can kind of dig into that conversation with your husband if you're having different kind of conflicts in that area. But that's a great question, and it's not unusual at all. It's not unusual for that to be the way that husbands feel. Okay, the next thing that I want to mention about support is, wow, we have just really zoomed through here. The time, sorry, is I want you to remember that you're a project manager. Now, that may not be something that you've been told very often about your role, but it's really true. If you treat your job and your role like you are a professional businesswoman, you're going to approach it in a way that will set you up for success, okay? And I say project manager because when you look up all of the things that a project manager does, it really does help encompass a lot of the descriptors of what you end up doing. So there's 15 different descriptors. I'm going to read them off here so that you can see how much lines up with what you're choosing to do this year. Different characteristics of a project manager. They need to have good leadership skills. They must be good negotiators. They need to be good at scheduling, effective at cost control, risk management. Is this science project going to blow him up, and does he need goggles? Contract management, like we have a commitment and we are not going to stick to it. Also comes under getting supplies and making sure that that's what contract management is also. I contracted with this company to provide supplies, making sure that you actually get the supplies. Critical thinking skills. Communication. Good communication is your responsibility, often between other parties that do not have good communication skills. Project recovery. How many of you have struggled with something that feels like it's failing, and it's your job to figure out how to recover it? Coaching. You're going to need to talk other people into doing their job well who feel concerned or worried. Your kids, not sure if they can do it. It's going to take some coaching skills. Task management. Quality management, making sure it's done well. Meetings management. Have to have conversations between different children, and between children and their tutors, or between children and their father, or between you and the principal. Business case writing. That sounds really, really official. What it means is that it's your job to notice what the needs are and be able to come up with a solution and articulate that this is the need and this is the solution that we're going to apply to it, and a good sense of humor, because that can be a very stressful position when you're working with other people and trying to help other people get along and be successful in their tasks, and it doesn't go the way you want it to go. Having a good sense of humor is extremely helpful. So those are some of the aspects and characteristics that people look for in a project manager. And aren't those all also things that, as a homeschool mom, they are characteristics that we have to embody? And so because I say that you have similarities to a project manager, don't be afraid to dig out some business principles and apply them to how you run school, run your family, because that's really what you're doing. If you're doing it well, I would encourage you to approach it as, I am a professional in this position, and and going to do it well. It'll also help kind of distance a little bit emotionally from, oh no, they're my kids and I might ruin them. And we start to, die. Right? So, and you can pick up all kinds of great business books and stuff that will apply directly to what you're doing as a mom. Things like the 4-Hour Work Week or the Big Leap or Essentialism or all these business books that have been written about how to work effectively and how to get the job done. All these different books in the business world can really apply well to how you run your family. All right. One other thing that my dad, who was a project manager, told me in conjunction with this is keep in mind that in a company, they say that if you have 3 or more employees working for you on any given job, they highly recommend a non-working foreman, meaning somebody's in charge of those people that doesn't do anything but help make them successful. And if you can keep that in mind when you are trying to navigate all the different needs in your house, first of all, if you're dealing with 3 or more people, you need to cut yourself a whole lot of slack if you're doing it on your own and you're still trying to get something done. But also, it really elevates the need to delegate. Notice the need to delegate so that your job becomes, I am the supervisor of everything, everybody else doing the work, which is why I talk about chores earlier and the importance of giving out chores. If you can help it, delegate all of the chores. You will still have things that need to be done because they won't know where the rags are or how to fill up the spray bottle with the glass cleaner. They're not going to sufficiently clean out the microwave, and that's going to end up being your responsibility. If you can delegate as much as possible to the other people in your sphere, and you be the supervisor or the non-working foreman, things are going to go a lot more peacefully. We did this in my family. It worked like a charm until some of my siblings got annoyed that they felt like that the supervisor didn't have to do any work. My dad said, aha, then you can be supervisor. And so we would do like cleanup around the house or something. And my siblings would decide, or he would pick one. You're in charge today. You're the supervisor. It's your job to delegate the tasks, to make sure that everybody's getting them done, to make sure they have all their needs met. And some people loved it. Some of my siblings loved it. I loved it. I'm the oldest of 8. I kind of liked being in charge a little too much sometimes for my own good and for the benefit of others. But there were others of my siblings that they got put in charge and they were like, yeah, I don't want that job. That is way too much work. I was running around like crazy the whole time. So, and that's just a person who is there to make everybody else successful. So keep that in mind when you're delegating schoolwork, when you're delegating household tasks, that being the non-working foreman really is a job all by itself. And do not feel guilty for delegating as much as possible, because nobody else is carrying the weight, the emotional and mental responsibility of this job like you are. Okay, so that counts for a lot. The final thing I want to say is about celebrating, and I'm so sorry that it's taken so long. I had no idea how to take this long. Is you will enjoy the process of schooling your children much more if you will intentionally plan times of celebration, times to rejoice, set aside times to just enjoy the hard work that you've put in, and help your kids do this too. So maybe it's something like every Friday night you have dessert and just celebrate the fact that you all worked really hard on your schoolwork. And don't get to Friday night and be like, well, you kind of worked hard, but you kind of didn't, so no dessert. No, we have dessert. And everybody worked hard. Thank you. Good job. And we're going to keep working hard. I'm just so proud of you for putting in the effort. Why do we do it that way as opposed to like actually evaluating, did they work hard? Did they not? Because we are calling them up to who we want them to be. I know you're a hard worker. I know you gave it everything you got. Even if you didn't get as much done as what we anticipated, I know that you overcame all kinds of mental distraction or discouragement. I know that you weren't feeling good, but I am confident that you gave it your best shot. Listen, you've been in a funk. You have. And you know how hard it is to perform and get your stuff done when you feel really awful. Your kids are doing the same thing. And we can just call it like, hey, I know you gave it your best. You know the times that you give it your best and your best looks really awful to the rest of your family. They're just doing the same thing, and we can call them more, hey, I know you're giving it your best. Believe the best of your kids. Give them ways to rejoice, and then you rejoice too. Maybe you don't make a day, maybe you don't have school one day as well as you'd like. Maybe everything hits the fan and you end up like not doing it at all. But hey, you give it your best shot. You address the needs of others. You decide something is more important that day, like emotionally connecting with your kids, or somebody, heaven forbid, has some sort of physical actual accident that you had to take care of instead, and so you didn't get any schoolwork done. You chose the priorities that needed to happen. Take the time to celebrate them. Now, celebrating can look all kinds of different ways. It can look like eating dessert on Friday night. It can look like mom's going to celebrate what an awesome teacher she is, whether she feels like it or not, she's going to celebrate it. And that can look like, I'm going to take a bubble bath every Thursday evening to celebrate my awesome teacher skills. Or I'm going to go get my nails done. Or COVID's happening and you can't leave the house. So what we're doing tonight is we're putting on some really pumping dance music, and we're having a dance party in the living room. And if that means we're having a dance party of one while the rest of you stand around and gawk at me dancing, so be it. I'm moving my body and having a jolly time. Or you put on some sports wins so you can get all inspired and like cheer like your team won, right? Anything to kind of get your body moving, or something that says, I acknowledge that the effort that I am putting into this has value. And I respect myself enough to acknowledge that I worked hard at it and I did well and I can have a good time doing it. And that's momentum, and that's courage that gets us to the next thing. It gives us the courage to go again because we had a good time. Oh, it's just the same, and I've told this to other clients before, it's just the same as climbing a mountain. If you climb a mountain and the only thing you ever do is look at your feet, I got to get this rock and this rock and this rock and this log and this stick and go around this thing and go around this. And wow, this is a really steep part. I'm going to have to get on my butt and scooch up that thing. And now I'm so tired and I need water, and climb and climb and climb and climb. Eventually you will forget what you ever decided to climb this for. Why am I working so hard? I cannot figure this out. This is a waste of time. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I keep tripping over stuff. This is hard. I don't want to do it. But most people, when they climb a mountain, if they hike and they start to get tired, they stop. They take a nice big drink of water. They look around, and if they're at all high enough up to look at something, they take a moment to enjoy the view that is there, that is available. Wow, this forest is really pretty. Wow, through those trees, I can see a clearing over there. I am a lot higher up than where I was before. That's really pretty. Oh, feel that breeze. Ah, that feels so good. It's so hot up here. I'm so nice. I'm so glad the wind is blowing. That's the kind of thing we do when we get tired while we're hiking a mountain. We don't sit there and just like stare at our feet. I mean, some of us don't want to hike a mountain, period. Let's be real. But if we were, that's what we would do. We would stop and be like, oh, this is beautiful. And we put a smile on our face and we look around and we enjoy how far we've come. And then we'd be like, all right, this is nice. And I know the next time I stop, it's going to be even more awesome. And so we head down and we hit those rocks again and we do walking, and we pay attention to where our feet are going to go so we don't trip, and we're making sure that the kids are coming along behind us. And when we get to that next place where we're like, whoo, that was a doozy of a climb right there, we stop and we look around and we enjoy the view, right? That helps us remember why we bothered to climb a mountain in the first place. And you need that for this. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You're going to need to stop and drink some water and enjoy the view. All right. And if you don't intentionally put those into your day, you will burn out. If you don't intentionally put them into your week, you will forget why you're doing it in the first place and want to quit. So just like you need curriculum, you need those influences in your life. You need support, and you need to plan in times to enjoy the progress that you're making. Even if it's not as far as you thought you'd be, you can enjoy the place where you are. All right. So that's my encouragement to you about celebration. I know that that is a lot of information, but you've been so awesome to hang on. And while I am seeing who commented, and if you've been on the whole time and you haven't commented, this is your chance to throw something in there if you want to be eligible for the drawing for my favorite support secret. My favorite support secret. So go ahead and make sure that you have commented something on there so that you can be in the drawing. And if you have any questions about support and celebration, let me know. I'm going to make sure I've got everybody in my little random, everybody that commented something in my random thing, my random number generator. That's what it's called. All right, so I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I only see 4 comments, so that's going to be a really short poll. You have a good chance of winning if there's only 4 comments. There we go. All right, let me make sure they're the ones that I've got in here. I got that one. Got that one. This one's a little more expensive gift, so I just want to make sure that I've got everybody in here. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And where did my little thing go? Give me just a second. There it is. All right. So the winner of the support secret, which I'll tell you about it once I tell you who the winner is see if you're still on here. Shannon. Did you actually? Yeah, Shannon Brown, did you say, are you still on? You're the winner of the support secret? If you're still on, I'll tell you what that is. I want to make sure that you're still one of the people that's on. Comment below. Yay, you're on. Okay, awesome. So my favorite support secret is coaching. It is my favorite support secret. I'm not going to sell it to you because that was my commitment. If you want to know more about my program, you can go to supermomschool.com and you guys can check it out over there. My job is not to try to convince you that that's for you. However, I am giving a coaching slot away for 4 coaching calls to support you through this school time. There'll be 4 private coaching calls, each about 45 minutes long, to talk to you about what's working, what's not working, how I can best support you as you navigate the upcoming year. So that goes to Shannon, which is fun. I'm excited about being able to do that with you. So definitely private message. Well, you've already private messaged me your address. So I'll be in touch with you about how we schedule that. And, but yeah, that's my support secret, is that when my child, I said my child was 6 years old. I had 5 kids. My oldest kid was 6. It was around that age with that many kids that I lost it. And I say I lost it. I ran out of emotional margin helping other people. And as a result, I came in my house and my oldest child, my 6-year-old son, Jonathan, was doing something naughty. I don't even remember what he was doing, but I picked him up and I threw him across the room. I had no emotional margin and I flew into a rage and I chucked him. Thankfully, he was not injured physically, but he can tell you he remembers that day, and we've worked around it emotionally since then. I'm so thankful that he's forgiven me and we have a very different relationship. But it was about that time that I discovered that I needed something different, and we stepped back from the commitments. I say my husband helped me step back from the commitments that I had and helped me find a coach. And so I discovered the world of life coaching and just how much my own brain cannot get me out of the problems that my brain gets me into, that I actually need other people to help me, because my brain plays tricks on me based on habit, based on past experiences, based on fears, based on the way I was raised, all kinds of things. And so that's my secret, is one of the ways that I would say that I thrive the most is through coaching. And I still have a coach. I try really hard to always have a coach because I'm always wanting to grow. I'm always wanting to be the mom the best mom I can be. I also discovered that if I knew more about coaching, that I could use those skills on my children. And I discovered as they started moving towards teenage years that really was a great way to parent teenagers, was to learn the art of what it is to be a good coach. And then I was set up to transition from I'm in charge, I'm the parent, to you're independent and have to run your own life. That coaching is actually a great way to transition from obedience to independence. And so partly I got into it to figure out how to not be a total wreck myself. And I would say that most people who were around me at that time would not have perceived me as a wreck. Like I was a confident person. I was rocking out the work. I was taking care of my kids. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. And and my family was taking some pretty big hits as a result of showing the rest of the world that everything was okay. So coaching gave me a position to be able to, I would say at this point, 85% of the time, be having a fabulous time in life and loving my family well and really enjoying it genuinely. It's not a Facebook like fancy, I'm going to post only the things that are cool and I'm not going to post the things that are bad. And but we genuinely have a lot of fun together. I still lose it. I have not thrown anybody across the room. I have yelled. But as far as overall in my life, I feel like more often, most of the time, I get to enjoy being the mom I want to be, and that feels so satisfying. It feels in integrity. It feels like standing in who God created me to be. And I just want you to know that that really is available. It's available out there to feel like life is amazing, to feel like I'm right now living in the abundant life that God said was available to us. It's not a trumped up, hyped up thing. It's actually a possibility. So There's lots of coaches out there. And I would say if you don't have one, get one. Figure out how to get one. If you don't have the money for one, I didn't either. I did it anyway. And if you don't believe me, I didn't have the money, we can talk sometime and tell you about all of my finances. I'd be happy to tell you the numbers. But I would say hands down, it was one of the best things I've ever done, second to asking God to come into my life and have Jesus as my savior. So I encourage you, that is my secret. If you want to know how this happens, that's it. I got a coach. And there's tons of them out there. You can look around. So that's a free gift for you, Shannon, and anybody else who wants to just be encouraged on a regular basis. You can join the Moms in Control group. That's free. Occasionally I post stuff in there, and I also have a newsletter. If you want that, you can private message me. Both of those things are completely free. I have a podcast coming out in August that you can listen to. It will be called Super Mom School. It's not out right now. If you want other free encouragement right now, there is a podcast from last year on iTunes and all the other things called Fruit Pursuit. I did a whole year of practical application of the fruit of the Holy Spirit. So you can check that out if you want encouragement that way. All kinds of free things that I offer. And my paid offers are at supermomschool.com. So you can check that out. And that, my friend, is the end of Get Ready for Homeschooling in 5 days. So I thank you for being here. Thanks for showing up the whole time. I hope you find yourself encouraged. And I will be reaching out to you to see, I'll either reach out to you or feel free to send me something, but I'd love to know if you still have questions or if you feel like this answered questions for you. I would love to know specifically what questions it answered. And if you still have some, that would be really helpful feedback. So I know how to help others in the future, if you'd be willing to take a few minutes and just let me know those things. Yeah. So otherwise, thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing up and giving your time. And I hope and pray that this will be of benefit for you. That really was my heart here to help set you up for success. So I hope we've been able to accomplish that. And I hope to connect with you. If you're not my friend on Facebook, why not? Friend me. I'd be happy to connect with you. That'd be fun. All right. That's all for today. And those of you who won prizes, I'll be in touch. All right. Take care.